Kevin Gordon here from Autosavant.com, coming to you from the 2013 Mercedes-Benz SL550. In this portion, I wanted to talk about the technology that's in this car, because there's quite a bit of it. You get lane keep assist, radar guided cruise control, which will bring you to a complete stop. To pull away, it just requires a touch of the gas pedal. It's got a wake assist, lane departure warning, eco stop start, which means it's got automatic stop start on the transmission. You get the super cool feature of the fact that the windshield washer fluid for the wipers is shoved out just in the blades of the wipers, which means that if you have the top down on the car, you can still wash the front window without bathing yourself in window washer fluid. It's of course got rain sensing windshield wipers, automatic headlights, automatic high beams, so when you're driving at night, the lights, manage themselves from a high beam perspective. It's got turning headlights, so as they seek corners and actually do a really nice job of it. It's one of the more natural adaptive headlight systems that I've been in a while. But of all the technology pieces of this car, I actually think it's the stereo that might be the most impressive. It's and I might have this wrong, it's either a 600 or 800 watt Harman Kardon unit that comes in as stereo. There's a Bang & Olufsen system that is available, but I haven't seen it yet or heard it, and I can't imagine it's much better than the Harman system that's in this car, because it's a really, really good one. What makes it, I think, so special is as they've called it, their front base woofer setup that's in this car. So built right into the chassis of the car are two sealed subwoofer enclosures that sit underneath your feet in both footwells of the car. And what that does is, one, makes for very clean, very solid packaging. But the other thing it does is makes a sealed chamber for the actual speaker, but then also sort of a secondary chamber in the footwell, because acoustics and all of that, it's pretty challenging to make bass that is subsonic, so below hearing level. In subsonic is one of those wacky terms that people throw around, audible in an open air car. So with the top down, this thing is really sealed up, so it works quite well from a stereo perspective. But what's amazing about it is, even with the top down, you get amazing bass response out of this stereo. Most of the speakers are up in front of you, so there's a bunch of them in the dash, a bunch of them in the doors. There are some in the back deck, but from a listening perspective, it does seem very front stage heavy when you leave on all the logic processing that's available in the car, and I think that's fine. It does give you this sort of stage impression, but the stereo is clear, it's loud. It might not have the richest of mid-ranges that I've experienced in some of the higher end stereos, but the brights and the highs are very clear and very crisp, and the bass tones in this stereo are as good as anything I've experienced. The fact that they're making bass sound this good in a convertible is really very impressive. The other thing about the SL is there's never a time that there's a very small gap in traffic that you can't insert yourself in it. So other technology of the car, the seats are active bolstered and come with 4 different types of massage. They're also heated and cooled, and of course Mercedes has their air scarf feature that's in this car. So with a push of the button on the dashboard, you start to get warm air blowing out of the vents that are here on the seat. So it really does make this a car that's easily a 3-season open air roadster. You can drive this car way into fall if you live, north of Virginia or somewhere in Northern California. And even on a nice summer day, you could easily drive it with the top down and never be punished for it. As I talked about in some of the earlier segments, with the windows up and the window deflector up, it's quiet and there's no buffeting in here, so the heaters can really work as they're supposed to. The radar guided cruise control system that's on the SL works quite well, although, as I've had the complaint with most of them that I've experienced, suffers from the problem that it just won't follow quite close enough to the car in front of it. And I understand why that is. You know, the car designers need to balance your safety with the automation of the system, but it's at speed on the highway, it just follows about a half a car length. Can you get through? It just follows about a half a car length too far from the car in front of it, so that really you find yourself constantly being merged in front of, and it slowly backing you up in traffic. But it really does make this, as sort of an executive roadster, a very calming place to drive to work in the morning. You know, if you're sort of willing to give up on the fact that you're going to be merged in front of from time to time, you put on your guided cruise, you've got lane departure assist and warning. So, you know, if you've got to make a phone call on the way to work in the morning, you're going to be as safe on the road for other motorists as really you could possibly be. It leads to a pretty serene driving experience when you're not so worried about running to the car in front of you. The other little piece of tech that I wanted to point out on the Mercedes is the fact that there's a little light strip that's mounted up on the dash. And what that does is it gives you warning lights if it fears there's going to be a pending impact, but also it gives you, like for the front rear parking sonar, you know, stepped lights to let you know how close you are to something. So one of those things I've always said about cars that have the front parking sensors is that a lot of them, it seems like you've got to put the car in reverse one time to get the system to go active. Well, on the Mercedes, those lights make it so that it's always active and it doesn't have to be beeping at you when you're pulling into a parking space to let you know how close you are to the car in front of you. You'll notice through all of this, I really haven't talked about the nav in the Mercedes. And it's because it's really not that advanced of a system. Sure, it's got traffic and the routing works just fine. The voice control seems to work as you'll find across, you know, any of its competitors. But the screen's a little bit small. It's bright and it's clear, but it's typical Mercedes drab in their navigation screen setup. Now, in between the speedometer and the tach, you do get a very bright and very useful extra control screen that's there that gives you speed, radio, and all the other types of things that you could be interested in knowing. But the Mercedes system still suffers from the fact that you turn off the radio, it turns off the nav screen. Also, if you're in nav and you're driving along and you want to go over and do something on the radio,
just said, "Mother, sit down."
There's no other way that it's telling you other than voice what's going on with the nav system. It's not like the nav controls then move over to the center screen to give you routing instructions. You really do have to go back to the nav screen to get them to tell you something. The wheel system that's on the Mercedes, I like these wheel control systems. I'm not a giant fan of the pure touchscreen systems, and this one works quite well. You get a back button, and you get a clear setup so that you can, you know, sort of move backwards in whatever the settings are. So it works well. It's going to do everything you need it to. Is it the most advanced of systems for today? No. I mean, BMW's got a more advanced system at this point, and really does make this one feel a bit aged. Although there's newer Mercedes technology that's filtering through their line right now. So in a year or so, there should be a greatly upgraded one. Although, with all that being said, I would be really interested to know, for the average buyer of a Mercedes-Benz SL550, how many people are using their nav systems to do anything else but listen to the radio, and from time to time control some of the other things about the car, maybe put in a navigation address. So there you go, the 2013 Mercedes-Benz SL550. Overall, really a very impressive package. It's nowhere near cheap, but if you're in the market for this kind of car, this one against the BMW, I would have a hard time, I think, picking the BMW after spending a week with the SL. I think it really does a very solid and nice job of being an executive roadster. It's comfortable, it's fast, and because of the solid hardtop, it really is a very, very solid place to spend time with the roof up on a rainy day. As usual, Kevin Gordon. I look forward to talking to you guys soon.